Hello and welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. It's Wednesday, time for Light 'em Up, time for another exciting industry panel today. We want to discuss the current situation, the challenges, the opportunities in the cigar industry and beyond, of course. Times they are changing, as we all know, and that's most certainly true for everything that's going on out there, but most definitely for the cigar industry as well. We want to take a little bit of an in-depth look at the manufacturing part today, hear and learn about the situation in Nicaragua, in Honduras, in the Dominican Republic. See about the aftermaths and the effects of the cigar boom that we have experienced recently, and also how the global challenges currently affect not only this industry, but us as cigar enthusiasts, as connoisseurs, as people who appreciate the finer things in life. And to get things rolling and to discuss all of these topics, I am delighted and honored to welcome the one and only Juan Martinez from Joya de Nicaragua with us, joining us live from, I guess, Nicaragua, right, Juan?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Reinhard, for having me. It's quite an honor to be back in this prestigious space that you have created for all of us. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for the warm and kind words. It's a privilege to have you with us, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing about the situation in Nicaragua and some of your recent observations and your current perspective on the industry as a whole. Next up, we have Ram Rodriguez from Artista Cigars joining us live from the Dominican.
How's it going, Reinhard? Happy to be here again. I'm in Miami, actually. Oh, that's a good cigar.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Joining us from Miami, but at least you'll share plenty of insights from the DR as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Jose Blanco, the professor from Arturo Fuente. Jose, well, you certainly don't need introductions. Well, I guess none of you guys need, but Jose, a friend, a regular, a fellow here at the lounge, thanks for joining us again. And I hope you can in particular share some of your international perspectives with us to get a little bit of a broader perspective there as well.
Always great to be here. I try to be every Wednesday, but when you're the guest, I mean, you really have to be, so you can't really fail.
Good to have you, Jose, as always. Thanks for joining us. And we also, we're supposed to welcome Christian Eroa with us, giving us a little bit of a Honduran perspective, even though he's still tied up in meetings, so he'll join us a bit later, hopefully. But in the meantime, let's get things rolling. To everybody joining us over on Facebook, as always, if you have any questions, please make yourselves heard. Put your questions into the comments underneath the live stream, and I will gladly and happily forward them to our industry panel. Juan, let's start with you. We saw each other a couple of weeks ago in Dortmund. I'm sure you also felt the excitement and the buzz of the trade show. And it still feels like the industry is doing great. People are enjoying premium cigars all over the world. It seems like there's just not enough cigars for people's hungry palates. What's your current feel? What's your current perspective on what's happening in the industry?
Well, again, it's great to see a lot of so many familiar faces here amongst shop owners, distributors, importers, and of course, friends of the industry. Indeed, I think given that we hadn't been together for so long, Intertabac in September felt quite energetic. I think even with the challenges that we faced, even with the dark clouds ahead of us, with respect to world crisis, the continuation of the pandemic, energy crisis, looming economic recessions, even with that, it felt quite positive. Even with impending regulation for cigars in Europe, it all seemed and felt very positive. And I think that is quite a reflection of this concept of a boom. I think that the whole theme of the conversation today is the boom, the impact on the market, on the industry. But I think it's important to recognize that even though it is a boom in the strict definition of the term, it feels much more than that, especially when you compare with the history of what the most recent boom and bust was during the 1990s. I would challenge the concept that this is short-lived, that this is just a burst or a bubble that is about to burst. I think there are important structural changes, not only in the way we manufacturers have made and have sold our cigars in the past 2.5 years, but also very important structural changes in the way retailers have sold the cigars. But most importantly, which is the ultimate driver of all of this, there's been a growth in cigar smokers, in the number of cigar smokers, and that's something that we've seen almost all over the world. Not only are regular cigar smokers smoking more cigars, I'm one of them, for example. I'm buying more cigars outside of our own cigars today than I've ever bought in my life. And I'm not a good example of that. So if I'm smoking more, I cannot imagine other people also enjoying more cigars. But secondly, we've also seen an influx of newer smokers. Some people talk about, a younger generation of smokers. Whatever their profile is, the fact is that there are more smokers today than when we came in 2020. And of course, the reasons are many. Of course, depends on the country and on the markets. But overall, I think there's been quite a strong change in smokers' habits, or how they smoke, where they buy their cigars, how they get their hands not only on cigars but also on spirits, craft beers, and all of these items that complement the cigar experience. And I think that is positive, because that means that even though the rate of growth that we're going to be seeing moving forward is not going to be aggressive as we've seen in the past 2 years, we're still going to see a strong base. We don't foresee that there's going to be a sudden drop and cataclysmic, shutdowns as we had in 1998 with the end of that boom, because today things are different. The conditions are different. The way we communicate and that we sell our cigars to the retailer, the way we communicate with the consumer, what we see people smoking in social media, in spaces like this, is evident that there is a growth in the overall market that demands our cigars. So we feel optimistic. We feel that 2023 will be a year of stabilization. I think we are reaching a point where we're getting to an equilibrium phase. Supply chain, materials, boxes, bands, tobacco. The past 2 years have been very unstable. But this coming years, I think we feel that there's going to be a stabilization of all of the supply, and hence a stabilization of us getting to market. So we're quite optimistic that this will continue moving forward.
That's great to hear, Juan, and many thanks for that wonderful introductory statement. Ram, when you hear all of this, do you feel the same way? What do you see in particular in the Dominican Republic, and with you having the finger on the pulse, also, of course, on the raw materials side, the cigar manufacturing, but also very importantly, what Juan shared in regards to the importation and distribution component, the retail side. What's your perspective on things there?
I definitely agree with Juan. This boom that is being going on for 2 years now, I see it very positive, and I think it's not just like a bubble that will burst anytime soon. Based on the demand of not only our cigars but also our tobacco, because that's our main business. I can see that nowadays is a little bit more stable than what it was before. So, like, it's not the demand out there is not increasing as crazy as it was before, but it's definitely still there. There's been a lot of changes in the industry, mainly on the logistics side, that are making things a little bit harder. That's one of the concerns that I have for the near future. And not only that, also the fact that we were not ready for such a big demand to come so quick. So for me, there's a little bit of concern on the supply of tobacco. We obviously have a lot of stock because we sell, but it's moving. It's moving very, very fast. So all that aged tobacco that we have in our warehouse for so many years is moving at a pace that I don't know what's going to happen in a couple of years from now, because we are, growing tobacco, but not at the same pace that we're selling. So eventually that will be an issue. On the supply
Rem,
chain,
if I may just ask you briefly, because that's such an important and interesting point there. Where do you think you will reach a point where you just say, stop, enough is enough? We need to keep inventory. We cannot just sell through everything in order to maintain enough raw material for the future ahead.
So for us, like in my company in particular, we're getting a lot of requests from companies that traditionally only buy certain kind of tobacco. Now for example, company X that always buys Ecuadorian Corojo wrapper from us. All of a sudden, they are requesting some other Ecuadorian tobaccos, but also fillers and binders from the Dominican Republic. So, like the market is shifting so quick, and that it's just been a little bit crazy. For us, we're still quite safe for the next couple of years. Right now, whatever we're growing now, if that tobacco will age for at least 3 years in total, in order for us to start rotating. But if it continues growing so fast, in the future, it will be an issue. So we haven't reached that point yet, but maybe next year we will need to sit down and say, like, hey, like we're gonna have to start thinking of how we're gonna be marketing our tobacco, or maybe we're not gonna market it at all and just stick with our current customers, because otherwise the quality of it will decrease.
Mm-hmm. Great point there. Jose, you have your finger on the pulse of the international markets, though you spent quite a lot of time in the Dominican still with Carlito. So you have the full overview, and you get a very good picture from all the various markets and the production side. After everything that Juan and in particular what Ram just shared in regards to the raw materials, are you worried about what's going to happen 1-2 years down the road?
Look, to be honest, I thought, and I think a lot of us made a mistake, that the PCA this year and the show in Dortmund would kind of dictate a slowdown of the industry. And unfortunately, and for good, I mean, it hasn't. But I don't think, at least in the United States, and I have a couple of bets made with some mutual friends that you guys all know. I mean, small bets of liquor and things like that. I don't think we'll hit 435 million cigars, and I'm willing to still betting. First of all, you got to look at inflation in the United States is the highest in the last 40 years. Gas prices, Europe totally unstable. Who would have thought that the euro would be at this? And this is what I've been talking with a lot of distributors. Before, when the euro was 130, 140, when they were buying from, let's say, from Joya or from Fuente or from whoever it was, they were getting like an extra discount of 30, 25, 20 points. But now with the euro being below, that's one thing that the European market for next year is going to be affected in a way that some people don't want to talk about it, but that's the reality. The other thing is, going to overall, of course, we're worried, and we'll talk. I know we'll talk about the Cuba situation later. But if this were to continue the way it's going, there's not going to be enough tobacco for this. You got to be a very, very powerful company. And I don't want to mention companies because we know who can go 3, 4, 5, 6 years without buying a leaf of tobacco. But the majority of companies, and even good companies, 2 or 3 years. So what I've been cautioning people since I would say October of 2020, instead of going from making 50,000 cigars a day to making 100, there's going to come a time where you're going to have to cut corners and the quality is not going to be the same. Now, the difference from the boom of 97 and the boom now of 2021 and 22 is that in 1998, the imports in the States went down by 26%, and the next year went down by 23%. So that means that in 2 years, we had lost almost 50% of the imports, and that's when Lou Rothman, Mark Goldman, the JRs of the world were buying cigars at 15 and 20 cents on the dollar. Now, this has not happened this year, but the other thing that people don't realize is that the boom of 90, 95, 96, 97 was a boom only in the United States. Now it's a worldwide boom. Now, something that a lot of people say about where have we grown? Yeah, we have grown on the guy that used to smoke 1 cigar and now is smoking 2 cigars a day. But a lot of people think, and I've analyzed this very well, and today I make a lot of notes, because people say there's a lot of young people. Well, I don't see it that way. Of course, there's a lot of 23, 24, 30-year-old kids. But what I've seen a lot is people that used to smoke for years stop smoking at 50, 60. I've seen people at 75 on their social media posting, I didn't, for XYZ reason, was not smoking or this or that, but now I found the cigars are better, the stores are more friendly, all this thing going on social media. I'm on the virtuals, I'm learning more. And also at the same time, the impact that social media has had. So there's a lot of things that you have to take in consideration. Do I think we're still going to have a good 2022? Yes, but I really, I'm a little bit worried about 2023 because I've seen, and we don't mention in our show, and I don't mention on any show, companies. I have seen too many companies cutting corners, back construction, tight draws. You take the foot of the cigar, ammonia to it. They're rushing a lot. And that's what happened in the boom. And I don't think it'll happen so bad, but it could hurt some companies. That's my 2 cents on this.
There's a lot of interesting points to tackle there. But to your last point, when you speak about cutting corners, Juan, Ram, you both are so heavily involved with the raw material and the manufacturing side. Is that something where you are very worried as well, or where you feel like there might be a certain tendency with some brand owners or even people that probably have approached you to, don't be as strict when it comes to the age of the tobacco or the way things are manufactured? Like, would you actively see that as well, or do you have any concerns there?
Yes, I think it's a normal consequence of the pressure that the market is exercising over manufacturers. I think last year was a record year on the number of complaints from importers and distributors due to lead times, and everybody was low on stock, and we couldn't keep up on time. And the truth is that a lot of our partners around the world are small family-owned operations that require the product as a lifeline. So there is pressure towards us to get the product out there. So we have 2 opposing forces. On the one side, we have high demand, which means that we need to sell more cigars than in a normal moment. And on the other extreme, we have, as Ram was saying, we have complications on availability of resources, materials, tobacco, boxes, and most importantly, people. So while we need to supply larger amounts of cigars, we are not able to produce and keep pace with that because we're being dragged down or dragged back by the resource constraints that we all are facing, particularly people. I would say that the tabaqueros, boncheros, roleras, the shortage that we are facing in Nicaragua is perhaps the most critical aspect of this current situation. Not that the other ones are not important, but the most critical has to do with the availability of talent and craftsmanship to roll the cigars. And so as a consequence of that, especially companies that may not have clarity or transparency on their own production processes and their own production requirements and their norms, might be tempted to speed up things and as such, sacrificing the quality. I agree with Jose that is something that you will slowly see. If not, you're already seeing that some cigars coming to the market are not necessarily at the quality that we should be expecting, particularly in higher priced brands. You see brands that are sold as super high premium, and they're delivering cigars that should never be in the marketplace in the first place. So yes, I think, and that's the risk that we as manufacturers face every single day, to keep production in place to satisfy the needs, the demands, and the requirements of our distributors around the world, and of course of cigar smokers, retailers, and everybody, while respecting the norms and the procedures of every single step of the process. Well, however, there are some companies, and we are one of them, that as a result of that, we need to adapt and we need to evolve and we need to improve. So we develop new processes, we develop new technique, we source new materials, we control quality in better ways so that we can adapt. And I think right now, as we move forward, the name of the game for manufacturer is adapting without sacrificing the quality of the cigars, adapting to improve, to become better. And I think that anybody in this industry today should be blessed, should be fortunate of being in the current situation that we are, but at the same time, should do its best effort to become stronger and to become a better company and a better organization for the cigar smokers, for our partners, and most importantly, for our people who depend on us on a daily basis and who ultimately are the heart and soul of what we are doing. So I think there are many lessons to be taken, and it's a great opportunity for all of us to sit down and become better. And that's, I think, a blessing that we all need to take advantage of.
Spot on, and in particular, not to fall prone to the same downfalls of the 97 aftermaths, for example, where probably a lot of those new cigar enthusiasts that we currently see enjoying premium cigars could easily shy away from it again because they have bad experiences with some of those inferior cigars where the quality is not up to par. So I think we as an industry altogether need to be very cautious of that in order to protect all the benefits and the positive effects that we have seen over the last couple of years, in order to keep those people enthusiastic and excited about cigars because of the highest quality that we can all deliver.
I agree. Building brands, legendary brands that are trusted by cigar smoker, it doesn't come only as a result of a boom or from one day to the other. Brands are built in the good and in the very bad times. Being able to deliver consistent, high quality cigars, even when things are great, when things are bad, that is how you build brands. You don't build brands just because there's demand. However, if you're doing a bad job, there is such an offer today compared to in the past, such a diverse, good quality offer that you will be simply left out. Smokers will not stop smoking because we're making bad cigars. They're going to shift to the people who are making great cigars. And there are a lot of people who are making great cigars nowadays.
Would you like, or can you share some of the aspects that you mentioned in regards to adapting, thinking ahead, maybe innovating as well? Do you have particular things in mind that you could share with our viewers as well?
Yes, of course. I think one of the key elements that I mentioned is regards to people. Before the current situation, we had certain policies and norms with respect to labor that we've had to change. We have to adapt because we have two forces fighting against us. One is the high demand for talented labor. For a company like ours that has a long-standing history and a good reputation for cigar making, that's a particularly tough challenge because you have newcomers who are going to poach and steal your people because they know that they have experience, so they don't need to invest in developing and training people. So we have that one. Just for your reference, we went the beginning of this year, I don't know today, but at the beginning of this year in February, we had registered more than 80 cigar factories in Esteli. Most of them were new, small operations that required labor. So we, big ones, or older companies, were under a lot of pressure for by competition for labor. And then the other extreme, we have a consistent big problem of immigration to the United States, which is depleting us of talented craftsmanship, particularly men, boncheros. And that is perhaps the biggest challenge that we are facing this year and moving forward. We don't know how long it's going to last, but the wave of immigration is really, really strong. So that has forced us to adapt. For example, how we train people. Our training periods are now shorter than in the past. We've developed ways to improve the monitoring of people who are being trained because we simply don't have the 3 to 6 months of training that we had before. We simply don't have enough time to have a group of people being trained because we need them today. We've improved the way we do our the overall process. There's been marginal yet important improvements in the way we administer our labor. So productivity has gone up. That means that people are earning better. Before we had strict limits on how many cigars people would make in a day. Today, those limits are higher, which means that people go to their homes with a better paycheck at the end of the month. So it's more of an incentive without having any impact on the quality of the cigars. So we've increased the rates of production per day, and we've increased the quality controls, and we haven't suffered quality issues. So we've broken a lot of the stigmas that we've had in the past of how to make cigars, how to monitor the quality, how to age the cigars without sacrifice to quality. And this is a constant process every day, and probably Ram and any other manufacturer knows it. Every single day you're working to improve, to be better, to adapt, and to work around your constraints.
One question that is now very, very current. We all saw the devastating news about the hurricane passing through Nicaragua. Obviously, Cuba was hit in a horrible way by a hurricane just a few weeks before that, and so did Miami. Alistair has a question in regards to that over on Facebook, because he was thinking about the tobacco crops, and he was questioning whether storms are causing damage to future availability of good tobacco, or if the production is fairly stable overall. So could you, on the one hand, probably refer to the question, but also give us a bit of feedback how the recent devastating news have affected the operations, the tobacco growing, and future supply?
Well, we had a hurricane a couple of weeks ago. Thank God it wasn't a strong one. It created a lot of flood. It generated a lot of flood in some places of the country. But even though we had a few days of heavy rain, we didn't have a important impact either in infrastructure and most importantly lives. So we've been blessed that we went by that particular storm without any important damage. Tobacco, we generally start our growing process around this time. So any damage that is suffered generally will be on growing beds, seedlings, which is sort of rather quicker to solve. We would generally start transplanting or growing tobacco in the fields in late November, late November, beginning of December, so that we are out of hurricane season. Also, we are blessed that our growing regions are protected. We grow in valleys and also in mountainous regions, which means that by the time the storms hit those places, the intensity of the winds have decreased. We do continue to have a lot of rain, but not as the coasts, like in Cuba. You know, we are not as close to the coast where the hurricanes come in. So that mitigates the impact. The mountains and the rainforest do a good job in reducing the intensity of the storms. Having said that, though, we continue to have a lot of rain. The humidity, the natural humidity in the environment is quite excessive at this moment, which poses a challenge because, as you know, cigars are very absorbent of humidity. So any cigar that comes out of the aging room needs to be monitored one by one to make sure that cigars that are being shipped are at the proper humidity conditions to avoid shipping excess humidity in our cigars. This is a problem that all manufacturers face during this part of the year, and we all have techniques and methods to control humidity with air conditioning, drying machines, drying rooms, so we can control for that. But that, I would say, right now, it's the biggest risk is that some cigars come out excessively moist due to the natural humidity levels in the environment.
Ram, in particular, in talking about the human resource aspect Juan mentioned earlier, I believe, but I could be mistaken, that the brain drought is probably less dramatic in the Dominican Republic, and still, I believe you're probably also all fighting for the best talent, and there's competition amongst manufacturers going on as well in regards to keeping all those valuable people within your organization. How do you go about that?
Yes, so on the human resource part, we did have, and we still kind of do have some issues getting cigar rollers with enough experience that can work in our operations. It's been happening to basically everybody here. A lot of new factories have been burned here in the Dominican Republic as well. So getting talented people to work with us, it's been a little bit hard. In our case, what we do first, most of the factories, they decide to build schools, training schools in their facilities. We went with a little bit of a different approach on that. We did a new training school, but a little bit farther from the tobacco region, a couple of kilometers away. We were able to get some warehouses in a free trade zone that traditionally was more for clothing manufacturing. And because of COVID, that industry basically died. So we were able to get some warehouses and build a little school over there. And right now it's still going, and we're getting new people trained of how to roll cigars and even on the sorting side as well. But the only problem with that is the fact that the demand is now, and this process takes a while. And it's not that you take a 2-week course and you are a master cigar roller. It actually takes years. So the kind of cigar that we are making in that factory in particular has a certain level. We still cannot do like our premium cigars in that facility yet. So it takes some time, but we're getting there.
Jose, I would love to jump back to a point that you made earlier when you spoke about the comparison between the international markets and the United States. And you made an excellent point that the boom of 97 was probably a US predominant boom, whereas right now we have a completely different situation. Also, we see that the dynamics are different, whereas the evolution in the US at the beginning was more considered to be an after effect of the COVID pandemic, with people smoking more. But the international markets, with what happened to the Cuban cigar availability and price policy, is completely different, because suddenly people are looking for alternatives, and the non-Cuban cigars see a tremendous spike in interest from the people. So how do you bring those two aspects and those two sides of the equation together? What will that mean for the future going forward?
Look, a lot of people think that that the increase of sales in mainly in Europe and the rest of the world, has been due to, let's say, the quality of the Cubans, the shortages of the Cubans, and now this price increase. But if you look back already in 2015, 16, 17, little by little, people started to realize that that not only French wine is the best wine in the world, that there were a lot of different origins that were just as good or even better sometimes than the traditional Cubans. And I'm not going to get into that. But what has happened is that people started, because of the impact of social media, the companies doing a better job visiting the shops, doing events, even though the pandemic came along. But a lot of companies, like in our case, and I think Joya did a lot of that stuff in Drew Estate, kept on going on virtuals and communicating and being in contact with the international market. Now, what has also happened is that people, the smokers of today, are better smokers or more educated than the smokers of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. In my opinion, the people today are more conscientious of what they're smoking. Before, the people would go into a shop, well, I want this brand or that brand or that brand. Now, a lot of people want to go into a shop, it doesn't matter what part of the world, and they want to talk to a person that's knowledgeable. And one of the parts that I think that's helped worldwide more people going and smoking is because retailers have realized that you cannot have some guy behind the counter that when somebody goes in and says, I'm looking for a recommendation, what do you smoke? And the guy goes, I don't smoke cigars, I vape and I smoke cigarettes. I mean, who the hell is going to go into a shop that's a serious cigar smoker to do that? So a lot of retailers all over the world, they're paying better wages and getting people that are more knowledgeable. Why? Because the consumer of today is more demanding. You can't go into the shop and says, well, I want this cigar, or the clerk or the store owner is recommending this cigar and say, well, it's a good cigar. Well, tell me what's good about it. Tell me about the wrapper. Tell me about the binder. How's it made? Tell me about the company. So today, you have to have knowledgeable people because people are more demanding. And the other thing is that people think the business in the United States is the same as Europe. It's totally different. Like in the States, you got people like Carlito, Jonathan Drew, a whole bunch of people that do an event and sell 500 boxes in a night. In Europe, that doesn't happen. You go, you do your events, people smoke the cigars, you interact with them, and then they buy their box or 5 cigars and things like that. So the building up of brands in Europe and the rest of the world is totally different from the States. But one thing I can tell you is that, and I think it was Juan who made an interesting point about this. It's true, Nicaragua has lost a lot of talent going to the United States. I don't know how bad it is in Europe. In Dominican, it's not that bad because we're on an island. If we were not on an island, it would be a different thing. Many other people would go. But if you do not adapt to, how would you say, to try to keep that talent in a certain way without cutting the corners, you're in trouble. And I know there's a lot of companies that cannot deliver what's needed, but I'd rather see that than to see some companies that were doing good 2 or 3 years ago, all of a sudden start to cut corners, because that is something that will definitely hurt the industry. And not what people don't understand, it does not hurt only that company, it hurts the industry. Because when people start talking about, oh, so-and-so had plug cigars, so-and-so had cigars that I put it in my mouth, I could fill up the ammonias. People, all of a sudden, you know how it is, they start thinking the wrong way. Negative things go 13, I think it's 39 times to 1 or 13 to 1 on a positive thing. That's something I read on Harvard Business School. But it's true. The bad things go out. Why do you think newspapers are sold? You think it's because of the good things? It's because of the bad things. So the companies, and I've said it a million times on every show I've been, keep up with the quality and not the quantity. Because if you cut corners, it might not hurt you this year, it might not hurt you next year, but going down the road, it will hurt you.
Juan, Joya de Nicaragua had from a very early day on had a strong foothold in the international markets. Going back to what Jose shared about those different dynamics in the markets, do you see an evolution now compared to 5-10 years ago, in particular in the international ones, and how do you compare those two sides of the equation we were talking about?
Well, I agree with Jose that not only is the dynamics different, I think the preferences are very different too. What is enjoyed in Switzerland is not necessarily the same what it's enjoyed in Spain, in Italy, and of course not the same that it's enjoyed in the United States. So those differences exist, and they're natural, they're cultural, they're social. We've seen, however, a getting closer of the two stories, and I think that communication technology and social media in particular have played an important role in getting the preferences closer together. Smokers in the United States want to try what people in Europe are smoking, and people in Europe want to get to experience what people in the United States have exclusively in their market. And that's why you have a lot of also cross-border selling between the two markets, because there's a lot of exchange. It's easy for me to see today, sitting down here in Nicaragua, what my friends, colleagues, or even a stranger is smoking in Czech Republic, in Bulgaria, in Switzerland. And I'm curious about that. I want to try it out. And also, that transparency and that clarity and that breaking down of barriers, that is something that did not exist 15 years ago. 20 years ago or before, and so now people are gravitating, trying to be more interested in products. So preferences are getting closer together. They're not identical, and they will never be. I think because you have also limits on the way you market the cigars, the way you promote them, the way you sell them, and of course the compromise, the dedication that Jose mentioned, that I think it's key, of the people who are behind the counter or in the humidor promoting and educating consumer about cigars. Of course, we have a different legacy, a different heritage of cigar culture in Europe that in the United States and the rest of Latin America that is very influenced by the United States. So I think the differences will maintain, but they're getting smaller. Now you see, especially in Europe, more, as they would call it in the UK, New World cigars or Nicaraguan cigars in the shelves than what you saw 2 years ago. So people are inevitably going to try them. They're going to smoke them, not necessarily going to like all of them, but they were going to get exposed to them. And in the past, they were not even available in the markets. So I think there's a getting closer of the both because of social media, but now because of the opportunities in the marketplace, that cigar smokers will become closer together, although not the same, one and the same.
Do you think that the international markets are now really becoming more and more interesting for the manufacturers as well? Whereas previously it was probably enough to just make your brand successful in the United States, and you have a vast majority of the global cigar market there anyways. Whereas now, and I felt that buzz and that energy in Dortmund, where for a lot of manufacturers meeting with the international importers and distributors, suddenly there's this interest in new opportunities, new markets, and new territories to be covered.
I think it comes in waves, as everything, right? A few years ago, with the looming risk of FDA, everybody came to Dortmund. We started going to Dortmund in 2006, 2007, and we were probably the only Nicaraguan company there at that time. Nobody came to Dortmund before. It was a European-centered show. But we've seen over the past 10 years how more people, of course, as new importers and distributors come to to existence, you see more diversity of people coming over. But when FDA was an imminent risk in 2015, 2016, a lot of people shifted to Europe to try to mitigate the risk. When the demand in the United States was so high, nobody cared about Europe because they didn't even have the cigars to sell. So they couldn't service Europe or the rest of the world. So they had to move a little bit away of Europe. Now, the United States is, it's not slowing down, but the demand is stabilizing. And we see that there is a growing opportunity in Europe. So everybody goes back to Europe again. And we're going to see that happening on and off, depending on market circumstances in each one of the regions. And of course, everybody's making the decision. They're pivoting to where the opportunities are. And you saw that effectively in Intertabac this year. A lot of cigar makers coming again but a lot of new people coming over too. And however, I have to add though, that we see nowadays more interest on the trade side. So we see more importers, more distributors becoming interested in representing cigars, not only because their original offer is no longer available for those companies that did carry a particular origin of cigars in the past, but also because they find opportunities in their marketplace. So that demand also pulls us to come, and we see newer, more and more importers in showing interest for cigars. Unfortunately, we're not able to serve everybody because we still have commitments to serve, but there's also that emerging in the marketplace.
Speaking of commitments, Juan, as much as I understand and I can appreciate the fact that you mentioned those trends and those ups and downs, those natural waves that we experience, for a lot of people, a certain consistency or reliability of supply is critical. And maybe Scott can chime in here for a little bit and share his perspective on this as well. But how do you manage that? Because you cannot jeopardize your international relationships one year because the US is doing great, and then you shift back and just feed people whenever you have something. So that's very tough balancing act there.
And I would ask Scott to pitch in, because he's the perfect example of that, of the good example of how things should work. And it takes me back to the concept of adaptation. We made the conscious decision of not sacrificing anybody because of the situation in the United States. Lead times became horrible for everybody, but we did not stop servicing anybody. We have to optimize portfolios. We had to make a lot of tough decisions, but anybody that required our cigars would be served. That was a commitment that we made to everybody, because it doesn't matter if you're big, you're small, if you're a partner of us, we'll give you the space and the opportunity to continue developing together as partners that we are. However, the key part of this is that we as companies adapt, we evolve, we improve. Scheduling, programming, planning ahead becomes vital. So, for example, there are some people who can plan ahead, way ahead, and some people that unfortunately don't have the capability or the technical aspects to be able to plan. So we cannot serve you from 1 month to the other. You have to wait 4 months. So once it's 4 months, you start getting into crisis and you start making decisions. So planning is key. Everybody now needs to adapt, from tobacco growers to material makers, printers, box makers, cigar makers, importers, and retailers. Everybody needs to improve their vision, improve the way they make their business, they program their purchases, they handle their inventories, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to take advantage of the opportunity. If you don't survive, if you don't adapt and you don't improve, you're done. You're done. The box maker that did not improve its processes to make sure that they were on time, they're out of business now. They were taken over by the guys that did adapt very well. And Scott is a good example of that, because he has the vision of planning ahead, of being order, of being disciplined, and being able to schedule his purchases ahead of time so he's not breaking his stock. Scott?
Yeah, that's quite a compliment, one. But it's the old pragmatic approach, isn't it? The market's booming, so you have to get more stock and you have to plan ahead. It's very, very simple. It's not rocket science. So we've done that, and we've worked very well with, obviously, Juan and his team And I think the key is really keeping the communication channels open with the manufacturer all the time to have regular meetings, regular updates as to what the situation is, so that as an importer, we understand their challenges, they understand our challenges, and we meet in the middle somewhere and we create a plan. So I think with Joya, we've already got orders in the system right through to the end of spring next year already on their system, scheduled out so they know what we're looking to buy. So it isn't rocket science. It just takes a bit of discipline and, a little bit of, it's been a good time for importers around the world. And it's a case of reinvesting the business, the money, back into stock. You haven't got stock, you can't sell it. It's as simple as that. And I think as a business, we've done that particularly well, and we're getting the rewards for it. So yeah, it's all about communication and clarity and planning. Simple.
Excellent points, Scott, and kudos to you and your team for what you have built and what you have accomplished over the past years and decades. And I'm very happy that we will do a separate show together, particularly about tour imports and your tremendous success story there in the next couple of weeks. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Ram, taking all of that into account, I know you are a geek on innovation, trying new things, strategic thinking about the business, and proper planning. Where in your daily operations do you see that, and how did you try to improve that component? And would you agree with Scott that ultimately it's all about the communication and being on a very one phone call away with all your global partners and make sure that things are running smoothly and properly?
Communication is definitely the key. On our side, we've been working really hard to not only to supply tobacco to ourselves, but to the other companies we collaborate with. We've been trying really hard in order, to keep up with the demand of tobacco. Little things like, for example, we before never used what is called in the industry the mulling rooms, which is basically a big room with controlled temperature and humidity to accelerate the fermentation process, mainly on the wrappers, in order to get it naturally darker, but on a fast pace, instead of just leaving it on a bale for months and months. We've been playing around with that a lot, trying to see what kind of results can we get out of it. Also, trying to see what can we do better in all the process of making a cigar. We also, same as Juan did in his factory, we increase the amount of cigars that the cigar rollers are allowed to manufacture per day. And we have done little things to reduce the amount of rejects we get every day. For example, something as simple as having a little scale with every buncher, so they can, if they don't feel confident that the amount of tobacco that they have on the hand is enough to avoid the cigar to be too tight or too loose, they can just scale it there at the spot, so we can reduce the amount of rejects. In the packaging area, we had improved the equipment that we use. For example, the shrink wrapping machines, we had to buy 2 more to have it in the packaging area. We have a bigger packaging as well, in order for us to be able to make more, to pack more cigars. Yeah, like a lot of little things. We always try to, not to forget the past. The boom in the Dominican Republic back in the 90s was, it was huge for us as an industry and as a country. And there are a lot of things that we had to do better, but we didn't. And the quality definitely decreased back then. And in that time, what happened is that the people that were just cutting a lot of corners because of their quality, they just stopped being around. And only the serious people that were looking, to keep up with the demand, not sacrificing qualities, are the ones that are still here nowadays. So the past is something that we should never forget, and just all the industry needs to keep that in mind to avoid something like that to happen as it happened back then. That I think is really, really important.
Very interesting what you said about the rapid tobacco operations and how you try to bring some new ideas or innovation to some of those traditional processes there. Also an interesting point, Ray commented here in the lounge that the current boom is also with much bigger cigars compared to what it was previously, which means you naturally have to use more tobacco for one cigar only, and you have plenty more demand for great filler tobacco, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. Nowadays, back in the 90s, 60 ring gauge was not a thing. 54, not even that, was not like a very popular ring gauge. Nowadays, the market tends to demand 50 to 54. I think that's kind of the sweet spot on the ring gauge side. So yes, that is actually a great observation on that side.
Jose, where do you think in the international markets there's a point where you have to sit back and realize, well, we just don't have enough cigars? And I think you have also been there, and you travel so much. You shared before we went live a little bit of your travel schedule, and it's challenging for most of the countries in the international markets, right? There is just not enough cigars. At least it seems that way now.
Well, you know that the company that I work with, it's been in Backwater, I don't know, for so many years. Just to give you an example, the last country we opened up was Spain 2 years ago, and I have a list of 32 countries that for the last 2 years I've told them, look, we can't open you up. And even the countries where we've been already, in every country in Europe, if they order X amount, they're going to get maybe 50% of it, maybe 40% of it, because we cannot fulfill it. Because that's one thing that, the Fuente has done forever. If those cigars are not ready, Carlito will not ship. But sometimes we go 3, 4, 5 months without a certain SKU. But putting that aside, started something that's a very, the Ram start that you brought up the point. But what people don't realize that when the United States made the 419 million cigars, the number one selling size was a Robusto. Then you had some Churchills, some Belicosos, and some Coronas. The number one selling size in the United States for the last 6 years is a Toro 6x54. Now the Robustos are not 5x50. They're 5.5x50, by 52, by 54. People call a Robusto 5.5x56 a Robusto. And the other size that's just as close to the Robusto size is a 6x60. And on a show about a year ago, talking with a panel that we have, Dave Garofalo and some people on it, I brought it up. And some people said, I never realized that. We estimate that 38% more tobacco has been used this year than previous years. Because you got the 60, the 62, the 64, the 70s, you got even 80 ring gauge. Even though in the rest of Europe, it's not so big, but even in Europe, I'm starting to see already in the last 2 or 3 years, 52, 54, 56, even 6x60. So you got to put into the equation all the tobacco that was used 95, 96, and 97. And even though we have grown more tobacco than ever, where does it really stop? And what I'm seeing also in the States and in Europe, still the number one selling size, doesn't matter what country you're in, it's still Robusto and Coronas. That is that. But in the States now, I'm seeing a lot of people that were smoking 6x60, they've gone to a 6x54. I'm seeing people who were smoking total 6x54 going down to 52s, even to 47s. So I think a lot of the old shapes, it's going to take time. People are more conscientious of maybe coming down. And to be honest, it would be healthy for the industry that people would start trying to smoke cigars with smaller ring gauges. We're going to have more tobacco. And if you do it right, I mean, there's a ton of people who do it, big ring gauges, do it correct. But I personally love a smaller ring gauge. That's my 2 cents on that.
Amen to that. Now, we internationally, we could also say that the situation of one manufacturing country in particular is not going to get any easier anytime soon. So how do you think that's going to pan out in the international markets in the foreseeable future?
Well, you know, I know that was going to come up. It's something I wanted to talk about. You know, for many, many years, I've been going to Europe. And for many years, I told a lot of friends, you guys do not want to face the reality of what's happening in Cuba. Cuba every year was producing less and less and less and less cigars. It was barely 60 something million or 67 million cigars last year. And I kept telling people, my friends in the UK, my friends in Spain, my friends in Italy, in Switzerland, they understood it a little bit more. In Belgium, they understood it a little bit more. That I said the well is drying up. The situation in Cuba is getting worse every single day. And then the other thing is that people don't analyze is this. When Habanos was bought in 1999, Cita and Seita get together and make altadas. It was a tobacco company. When the Imperial wanted to get into it, it was a tobacco company. But the people that bought that are people from Capital Adventures that they don't know the difference between a short filler cigar and a long filler cigar. They're all people, you know, hedge fund people and, you know, millionaires and billionaires that got into the business. So all of a sudden, with this disaster that's happening, the quality going down, all of us are going to get even more pressure, because if you think 2022 was bad for them, 2023 is going to be worse. But 2024 will be a disaster. Why? Because everything in San Luis, San Juan y Martinez, Vuelta Arriba, Vuelta Abajo is gone. 95% of the curing barns are gone. The seedling beds that were being prepared to grow, to transplant into the ground, it's gone. And I talk with a lot of those people down there, and there's no way. A lot of people said, okay, I can prepare the seedlings again and transplant, but where am I going to cure the tobacco? So it's going to be interesting to follow up what the Cubans are going to do, what the government's going to do to help these farmers. But the way I see it, we will all get even more pressure because of the shortage of Cubans. And to be honest, why have so many people also switch to non-Cuban cigars? Because the marketing we've done, the events that we have done, the traveling that we have done, the great job that all my fellow companies from Honduras, from Nicaragua, and Dominican Republic have done, and have proven that we also make great cigars. I've always said it for years. No cigar is better than another. They're just different because of the soil, the microclimate, how you ferment, how you cure, how you make the cigars, how you age the cigar. All that impacts in that. And now we're all benefiting from the mistakes that they have done, and because the way we have approached the industry. So always keep in mind, I know there's a lot of people hearing our show tonight. As always, don't cut corners, quality and not quantity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amen to that. Juan, pardon, sorry, I saw you unmuted yourself. You wanted to share something?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Because I wanted to get to you anyways, with what Jose just said and shared about the situation in Cuba, and yes, you mentioned earlier adapting doing the right thing and thinking ahead is a critical part of your thinking and the way you operate anyways. But do you agree with Jose that that pressure on the manufacturers will only get stronger over the next couple of years and the demand will only increase?
Yes, I think that, as I said before, we're very optimistic because of all of the circumstances, even with the challenges that we have ahead. I have to add something to what Jose said, which has to do with the role that our partners in the different markets in Europe, the role that they're playing. People like Scott and Tor Import, every single European market has a player that represents with soul, with heart, with passion, Nicaraguan cigars, the brands that they carry, and the job that they do representing, educating consumers, educating retailers is paying fruit, it's paying dividends now. That is a work that has been happening for many, many years. And also the success that these brands are having in Europe is a testament to this work of, of people around Europe who've been running around trying to convince cigar smokers to try something different, to open up their minds, their palates, to experience something that enhances their smoking experience. And that is paying dividends today. So I have to recognize that work. And being Scott here and people like Ray and John, who in their own way promote and educate people through social media, through events, that has been key. But yes, indeed, that generates more pressure for us. However, I'm quite confident on the role that cigar makers are playing in showcasing their products. And we're doing a good job. And the main reason why we're doing a good job is because Jose is here, Ram is here, I am here. We are accountable for our brands, for the products that we make. So we are the direct link between our products and consumers and retailers. So if any of you have a problem with either my product or Jose's products, Fuente products or Ram's product, you will reach out to us directly and we'll make sure that by the end of the day, that complaint is on the floor of the factory being solved. And if it's not being solved today, it's going to be, it's a lot of effort of being accountable for and to our cigar smoker is what makes the difference between, let's say, Cuban cigars and non-Cuban cigars. Jose was talking about the new ownership, but who is accountable there? We travel and we do events, and we are aware of what's happening with our products, and we make the best thing to represent our names, our families, our factories, our companies, our countries. So the accountability element is very important, and I think that's one of the most important differentiators between Cuban cigars and non-Cuban cigars, which is slowly turning into more trust, more confidence on the products, on the people who represent it, and of course, eventually sustainability and love for the brands. And that's something that we are already seeing and that we hope that continues to grow in the future as we continue to connect and forge stronger bonds with our smokers around the world. Jose?
I have to say something. Look, I'm not going to say this because I worked at Joya de Nicaragua for many years, and we still have a very close relationship. And I really, Juan and everybody there, they feel like family to me. But Juan made a point that I've said it for years and years and years, and a lot of people take it for granted. It's called accountability. You can call Carlito, you can call Juan, you can call Nick, you can call Pepin, you can call Ram, you can call Hochi, you can call anybody, and we'll pick up the phone. You're lucky if you can connect to Cuba, because the communication there is bad. And that's one of the most important things when you're traveling and you're behind your brands. And Juan also mentioned something important, the distributors you get. Look, there's a lot of brands out there that are great brands, but they have lousy distributors. People who are lazy, that don't want to go out there, that are waiting all day long in their office to get an order. If you're not out there hustling and going out and visiting your clients, it doesn't matter. It's face to face because everything has changed. So Juan, I've known that I always like to be on shows, even if I'm not the host or one of them, the ones invited to hear you, because I think you're on point, and I think you've learned a couple of things in the last couple of years. You're doing a great job.
Likewise,
Jose,
sentiment is mutual, my friend.
Jose, face to face is a good buzzword. And Juan, you mentioned social media, and you've done an incredible job with your presence on all the virtuals and the Zooms over the past couple of years. Steve had an interesting comment here at the lounge where he said the impact of social media is on the decline, and it feels, even for myself, I mean, I always say that I'm a technical dinosaur, right? And I'm not very good at all these social media things and all the devices and stuff. We're all trying, right? But it just feels like a lot of people are at a certain level where they're fed up with social media taking so much of their time. You don't feel it's the real deal anymore. There's so much crap going on, and plenty of posing and this and advertisement here and there, but it lost a little bit of its sense for reality and connecting with people on a meaningful level. What's your gut feeling about how social media, and in particular cigar social media, will evolve and change over the next couple of months and years? And would you also agree with the point that Steve made that we're probably migrating more towards privately owned platforms? That's, of course, for reasons of regulation and certain cigar platforms being taken down entirely, but to find that safe space where people can gather and where real interaction can still happen.
Look, you have to look at it both ways. In part, Steve might be right, but what you have to analyze is this. People are, I'm going to be honest. I was up to 5,000 because that's the max you can have on Facebook. In the last 2 years, I keep a count of that. I have unfriended 1,800 and something people. Why did I unfriend them? Because on their birthday, that's the way I control everything. I go down and I see 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. They're only talking about politics, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. They have not posted cigars. You know what? Boop, unfriend. What people are getting away is from the bullshit of politics. What people are getting away is from these wannabes that have never been in a factory, that have never been in a farm. They're giving out wrong information. If you look at the platforms of people like you, like Coop, like Bear, Eric Dojo, Abe, Garofalo, those people have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. They might not be seeing the show that day, but on YouTube and on the podcast and on that other thing that goes on that you download, I can't remember, what's that called? It's thousands and thousands and thousands of people. We have one of the greatest examples right here of what the impact of social media is. That kid up there, I call him a kid with all due respect, to Carl and Ruben from Stogie Lads. They are the ones that dominate Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and that. Could you believe in 2 or 3 years they have 20,000 followers? And their followers are not bought. And what they do on their website is one of the most professional websites. And I got to be honest, even though I've been smoking for 57 years, it's going to be in a couple of days, I've learned from them because they research everything. So I agree with Steve. There's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of private groups. But also, let's look at the private groups. The private groups all of a sudden start with 500 and 600. And all of a sudden, there's discussion in them. And then 2 or 3 guys take from that private group 200 or 300 and open more and open more and open more. But at the end of the day, you know, the big programs that have a lot of following, they come up with really content that people can learn. It's what people are following. Yeah, we have on Instagram, we have the posers and this and all that crap. But you have a lot of serious people on social media that really influence and that people follow. My 2 cents.
Yeah, very much agreed with that. Ram, what's your thoughts on the media landscape there and how things will pan out?
Well, for me, social media is important, but it's not the only tool, and you need to be very cautious on how to use that because it's just too easy. I can even go to to a cigar shop and buy some bundles and print a little band and pretend it's a brand that it took me 15 years, blah 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 blah. Here's the link. Go and buy them because they're very special. So the problem with this kind of platform is how easy it is to build a brand through it and make money out of it. So of course, it's a very important tool that we need, and especially nowadays, the younger cigar smoker is use a lot these kinds of platforms. But if you don't have this relation between a reliable distributor with the right reputation, that relation with your suppliers, with the market per se, directly, having a good exposure on social media is worth nothing. So you need to be very cautious of what you say and what you promote, and you cannot forget about the other methods of promoting your brand that are out there, because they are as important as social media. That's what I think about it.
Okay, but I want to say something, Ram. Okay, going by what you said, but how many times have we seen all these people, not before the boom, that went on social media, that were there for a year after they were gone? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the product. So you can put I don't want to mention companies, but there was companies that spent $3 or $4 million and lost. There was one in Tamboril, we're not going to mention it. He spent $3 or $4 million in 3 years. He was out of it. And he did all the social media in the world. Social media, if you do it right and your product is good and you're consistent and you have a good team and you deliver the way cigars should be, social media works. But if you come out with all these Mickey Mouse things and all these things that you're making up, that's not going to last, because they're not serious people. There's no quality to it. So social media, if you use it correct, you will benefit from it, absolutely. But if you do it incorrect, you'll just fall out of it.
That's correct. That's correct, Jose. And for us in Artista Cigars, social media is not only a tool to promote, it's mainly a tool to measure how is our products being considered out there. Because and that's one of the benefits of it. It's not like a one-way communication. It's actually a two-way. So we can see more people reaching out to us, asking us questions about our products, posting pictures of our cigars. I think that's the most important thing about that tool per se. But yeah, absolutely. If you just focus on, oh yes, let's build this industry, have a okay cigar and at a reliable price that we can charge 10 times whatever we paid for it, and then spend a lot of money on marketing through social media, I don't think you're doing the job the right way.
Gentlemen, before we log off for today and before we wrap things off, I would love to ask both you, Jose, and you, Ram, for a final outlook on the remainder of the year 22 and 23. We spoke about a lot of things. We know the general feeling for the industry is probably more bullish than bearish, despite all the challenges in the world. But we're facing tough times as a global community, yet cigars have proven to be resilient in such difficult times regardless, or in particular because of that. What's your gut feeling for the rest of the year and for next year? And what can we all do better to grow and evolve this industry and make sure that we're not just going through boom and bust cycles, but truly elevate the level of the industry overall?
Let the young guy go first.
Thank you, Jose. So for this year, winter time is right at the corner. So business as usual. Usually the demand slow down a little bit, and it's the time for us to focus in planning next year. I believe 2023 is going to be a fantastic year as well. Maybe, we are in this plateau, and maybe there will be a small decrease on the demand. We just need to be ready for it. And and for this year, basically we're wrapping things up and planning all the production we need to do during winter time to get ready for the summer next year. Jose.
Listen, there's a lot of things, to be honest, you have to take in consideration. The war in Europe has us all scared. Like I said before, I never thought in my life that I would see the euro below the dollar. Look at my good friend Scott Vines that I've known for many years. And to me, I think he's a gentleman, how he's also suffering with the pound, the way it's gone down. That affects him a lot. The US dollar is good. I'm happy because I get paid in dollars, but I cannot look at things only that benefit me. Look, the political situation, inflation, global warming, that a lot of people don't take it in consideration. Look what happened now that the boats can't even go down the Mississippi. In California, they're going to run out of water. Then you have part of Pakistan that disappeared with the flooding. So all those things in one way or the other affect us. One of the things, and I wish Juan would be here, that we have to have in the industry more unity. I've always told people, look, for you to sell a cigar, you don't have to talk bad about another brand or another company. Talk about the attributes that your company have. And I always tell that to the young salespeople and even to some old timer. So I think we're going to end well this year. We will not hit the 456 or the 440. I think maybe in the States, 420, 425 max, and it's still good. But we will see what's going to happen with, and Ram made a good point, because I know he deals with a lot of companies. A lot of companies are running so short on tobacco. The tobaccos that they traditionally would not buy or use, they're buying it now. With that, I'm not saying that they're buying bad tobaccos, but tobaccos that maybe in the profile of what they wanted to blend into, it didn't have enough spice or the sweetness or the earthiness that they wanted to try to create in the blend. So when you see that companies come from all over trying to do this, it tells you already the impact of the shortage of tobacco is going to have. Other than that, what happens in the States in the elections, that's going to be very important, because there's a lot of rumors of a lot of things that could happen in Central America, even in the Caribbean after the elections are gone. But other than that, I think we're going to have a great year, great end of the year. 2023, I hope, like I've said it, I think for the third time, the companies keep on making quality, not quantity. Don't cut corners. Instead of making 100,000 cigars a day, bring it down to 75 or 80 and make them with quality, because at the end of the day, will pay off. So that's about it. It's Reinhard, thank you for the invitation, and for everybody that's here, a lot of faces, especially Brian and Carl and my cousin and Scott and Rye and Mike and Guy and all the guys. It's always great seeing you guys.
Jose, many thanks to you. I couldn't think of a better sentence to wrap things off. In particular, the statement about quality first, not quantity. With everything that we shared today, I believe that can be taken as the one big headline and the mantra that we all should work towards and that we should all stick with. in general, it's wonderful to see the enthusiasm and the excitement around premium cigars and how the industry is evolving, the interest from avid consumers and cigar lovers. So we're all in a great place in regards to that. And I hope that we can make our small contribution to strengthen and foster that ecosystem and provide value with our humble platform. I would love to thank Jose Blanco from Arturo Fuente, Ram Rodriguez, Artista Cigars, and Juan Martinez from Joya de Nicaragua for chiming in today on our panel. Thanks to all of you for watching, for your contributions, comments, and questions. And we'll see you all again next week, same time, same station here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. So thanks for today. All the very best to you and a good night. Bye-bye.
All the best. Great show.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.